Hello, this is Lisa LaRose on Connect to Love here on PRN-FM, and I am joined, as always, by the wonderful Michael J. Russ. It is such a delight and a pleasure, Michael. How are you, and what's bubbling in your world today?
I'm doing really, really well. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be with you on this show. Beautiful day, hot day. Beautiful day, hot day. I think I talked last week about how I like to do projects because projects have a sense of completion to them that it's very satisfying for me. And as I've talked about before, life satisfaction is an automatic generator of happiness and well-being. And so I finished up the 4 barn doors this week, 4 new barn doors, prepping them for painting this weekend. So I'll get a chance to paint those later on in the week as my little side project. I published another podcast on my Life Moves podcast show, and it was a holiday weekend here in the United States, Labor Day, and it's interesting. One day of golf, and I got to do a lot of cool things. And I don't know if I'm not going to be a spoiler alert. However, the new James Bond movie that came out this past year, the last one they produced, threw me for a loop. I had no idea about the ending of that show. Of course, it's in the title, A Time to Die, I guess is what it was. But, wow. I was like, oh, my gosh. Men became less hard, more soft, more loving, and they showed a softer side of James Bond, which is really, really interesting. This is where we are today. It's the first with the Top Gun Maverick, where he had a softer side in his movie, and a great ending. From that perspective, let's keep the ball rolling here. All of these iconic male roles that are full of testosterone are now being written into movies that, sequels that have them transforming. Really, really interesting and very positive, I think, as a way of helping people understand that you can over time transform. You don't have to be, both of them had kind of been very misogynistic in their earlier movies. And James Bond is like, I don't know, the poster child for misogyny, I think. If you look at his dictionary, misogyny, James Bond, yeah, the various incarnations of James Bond, starting way back in the Goldfinger and the other days in the 60s. Wow, that was a totally different time, wasn't it?
For sure.
Yeah. So
I went to the movies as well. And, the movie that I chose to see was 3,000 Years of Longing. And it was very unexpected. A lot of the things that exactly what you were speaking about, how misogynistic men were throughout the ages. I mean, it was a very interesting concept where Tilda Swinton plays a character who finds a bottle, and as she's cleaning it out pops a genie who has had over 3,000 years of experiences with the different individuals who made 3 wishes, and he begins to tell her the stories about what happens. And she said, it seems that this wishing is, there's no story of wishes that it's not a cautionary tale, and that you have to really be careful what you wish for. And what was so interesting, because you and I last week, we spoke about the people that leave footprints on our heart, and why we are in each other's lives, how we gift each other with the ability to see the world in a new light. And that's sort of what this genie did. And I won't, like you said, I won't be a spoiler alert, but one of the people that did make wishes requested that they receive all the knowledge possible. But what happened in their quest for all the knowledge possible, they lost sight of their human connection. And it was just, it was one of those movies that really touches your heart, and it ended. You didn't really want it to end, and you wanted to see, you wanted to watch it again because there was so much to see and to experience in the movie. So that movie definitely did leave a footprint on my heart. And, when we were speaking last week, Michael, you said for everybody that is open to receiving the gifts of somebody else, there are those who have maybe perhaps been rejected or hurt or made a mistake or live in a place of fear, and they're not open to that. And you said that would be a really great topic of conversation for today's show. So I'm going to let you start off with, because I know you were so inspired by the conversation, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
It's interesting. I think both of us, because thank you so much, number one. We you were talking, something popped through my head. I just started off with the transformations of Bond and Top Gun Maverick. In Top Gun Maverick, and both of those movies literally had female leads that left footprints on the hearts of both characters. It's really interesting, and footprints that they eventually succumbed to, eventually had to deal with. They eventually had that in Bond, he had a love interest, and I'm not going to go into all the details. However, that love interest is somebody who, out of all the women he'd ever been with in his life, touched him the most, the one he really fell in love with, the one he actually said he was in love with her, something you don't hear Bond say very often to anyone. Same thing with in Top Gun Maverick, the lead character, had footprints left on his heart. Very, very interesting. And I think also what's interesting is that I know in one of the earlier Bond movies he was in love with a young lady who left footprints on his heart, who then turned around and betrayed him, and then he still moved past that and made a connection with someone else. And in our lives, we do this. We go get into relationships of all kinds. It could be friendships, could be intimate relationships, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, and whatever the context of the relationship may be, where somehow it doesn't end well. Somehow something goes on, and we make assumptions, and they make assumptions, or expectations aren't realized, and we're let down, we're disappointed, whatever it may be, and then we go apart and drift apart. Just literally, sometimes it's a drift, sometimes it's just a sledgehammer, and that's it. It's over. However, everybody that you connect with in some way, in my view, should leave some sort of small footprint on your heart. They should. To me, that's normal. It's a normal thing. And if your heart is not really open to having those footprints, and I'm going to tell you a little story about my mother. It's really interesting. And I'm sure she wouldn't mind because it's a teachable moment. However, she said, and if she were here with us in this interview, she'd say this very same thing. The first time she had to leave with my dad, they had to leave a station. This was really before my brother was born. When my father in 52 graduated from Tuskegee University, he was a second lieutenant at the ROTC, went off on his career. I can't say where they went, New Jersey or somewhere, and he had to do some training. And she made friends. They were there about a year, and she made really close friends. And Mom used to have a really, really open heart, she says. And then she, after the first time that she had to leave and go to another station, she said, it hurt so bad that I decided I wouldn't ever get that close to someone at a destination ever again. And she told me this, and I'm like, huh? The interesting thing is that when we were in Taiwan, there would be fighter pilots. It was during the beginning of the Vietnam War. It was 1966. It hadn't been declared a war yet. However, we were doing missions and things from Taiwan and I think Clark Air Base, but in the Philippines. But a lot of pilots would come through, and what's interesting is a lot of these pilots were pilots that they were college friends or friends of college friends, people that they had met around in various bases, and they all kind of came together and it's interesting because they were always throwing parties, they were always celebrating. It was almost this, I don't know if I'm coming back, after the next mission kind of thing, atmosphere. So everybody kind of like embraced the moment and lived for the moment. That would characterize that particular era where in that particular part of the world where this battle was going on, and these men were going off, flying and doing missions, and they didn't know if they were going to come back. However, it's interesting that, and I asked her, I said, did you ever have a point when you would allow yourself to just kind of open up to friends? And it was interesting because she said yes, because there were friends that you always have a handful of friends, a nucleus, so to speak, of friends. No matter where you are in the world, you always connect. Back in the day, there was no social media, no Facebook, no computers, none of that internet. You only had to connect with people by snail mail. So you write a letter, you write a postcard to where you think they are, and then there's a forwarding address. And if they were really close, they'd let you know their address changed, which is what they would do. They'd send a letter off and say, my address is going to be changing. We're moving to so-and-so. Here's our new OP address. And you'd and that would happen. But it's really interesting because I know when I was just writing about it in a podcast a couple of podcasts ago on my Life Moves podcast about letting go and how every 2 years everybody knew that our time was limited. Wherever we went to a high school in Turkey or a high school, elementary school in Taiwan or the Philippines or wherever it was, upstate New York, went to a high school. And you went to a lot of high schools and elementary schools. I went to a lot of high schools and elementary schools. And you make friends. You create relationships. And every relationship teaches you something. You learn something about yourself. You learn something about the other person. And it's what's unique about that is that if you kind of go into it in the right way, you can learn a lot about yourself. And it's just this little journey that has all of these twists and turns, and you don't know where it's going or what's happening, depending on the kind of relationship it was. But I know for me, I had to just simply let go of some people. There was no way I could keep in touch with everyone at the time. There was no internet. It's kind of like you cut it. I'm leaving the next day. You just make the best and the most of every moment. And I learned to live that way. Nowadays, you don't necessarily have to live that way because you've got an instant connection with somebody on a text thread or an internet social media site. To me, it's different nowadays. It's different. How do you develop the depth of relationship that you need to have in order to really evolve as a person, as a human soul in this earthly plane that we're all playing around in? And I know that for me, being authentic is incredibly important. Nowadays, a lot of young people worship musicians and sports stars, sports personalities, and television and movie personalities. I want to be like this person. I want to be like that person. So they mimic themselves after that person. And really what being in a relationship does is help you understand who you are. And that is the value of any friendship on up, is to learn who you are, not to mimic somebody else, to learn what your own authenticity is. And so that to me is where you begin. If you've been hurt in the past, if you've had your heart stepped on, as I say it every once, so to speak, you have to come away from the sadness and the grief and shutting yourself down and move into kind of continue to be to open yourself up a little bit. To me, vulnerability is very important. That word is not one that's used with a lot of men in this day and age. It's not a bad word. In my view, it's a good word. It's a great word. Being vulnerable, opening yourself up, telling others how you feel about them, and recognizing how you feel when you connect with them. And in whatever way you go out for dinner, or you go out for lunch, or you go out for some drinks, you share something, a movie together, or whatever it may be. Vulnerability is incredibly important. Every guy I know, we all hug each other deeply. All of my friends.
Oh, that's wonderful.
We get together. Yeah, we got to have big hugs, man, big hugs. And I just talked to one of my best friends today, who I met at a jazz festival about 10, 12 years ago. And he's turned into getting one of those brothers from another mother. And we always end the call with, "Hey, I love you, man. I love you. And take care of yourself." And
that's wonderful.
You have a nucleus of people, 4 or 5 people maybe. It's not like you've got 1,000 people you do this with. Everybody should have a nucleus of about 3 to 5 friends. I know you do. People that, and they may not live in town. They may live somewhere else in the world. However, it's a connection that you curate, and they know everything about you. You know everything about them. You share things with them. You share your vulnerabilities with them. That's so important to have that, somebody you can share yourself with. And they're not judgmental, right? They're always loving, always supportive, not looking to cure anything that's going on with you or heal anything, other than being there as a supportive source that you can turn to and maybe talk something out. Tell me, I know you've got somebody like that. You've got a nucleus of friends, right?
Oh, absolutely. And Michael, when you said that about your mother, I thought, about the quote, "It's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all." And as humans, I think that we crave connection. We're very social beings, and so when we don't have that, when we don't put ourselves in that space of vulnerability, of maybe allowing ourselves to be seen, which for women, you can use the metaphor of makeup. They get up in the morning and they put their makeup on and they're ready to face the day. They can kind of hide behind that. Now during the whole pandemic, people could hide behind their masks. And there was a certain vulnerability, I think, in removing that, because I don't know what it was.
Still is.
It gave people a false sense of security. They weren't really being seen. Sometimes the fear of being hurt or rejected or ignored, or even getting our needs met can be very frustrating, and it can be very fearful. I really like, researcher Brené Brown said vulnerability is about having the courage to show up and be seen. And I really love that, because when you are seen, you don't worry about, am I going to make a fool of myself? It's like, do I have something in my teeth or whatever it is? It's like whoever you're with, that you're being seen, whatever new friend, or like you said, you give them a big hug, they love you no matter what. They accept you, they nurture you, whatever it is. You may not always see eye to eye, but you can pick right up, if it's a week later or 10 weeks later or 10 years later, just where things just left off, because you have that deep connection. And I think that a lot of that is allowing yourself to be vulnerable and recognize that it doesn't mean that you're weak. It just means that you're open, and with even with the ability to share what it is that you need. I don't know, in so many relationships, it's so hard for people to vocalize their feelings and explain what it is that they need. And so, like you said, there's a lot of hurt. If you're not getting what you need, sometimes a relationship ends because there's no communication. And, maybe years later you think, oh, well, I wish I would have said this, or maybe something would have been different if I just would have opened up a little bit more. And
there's the lesson.
They don't. Yeah. Mhm.
There's the lesson. It's like, not to interrupt you, but I mean, in terms of, to stay on this point, when you have to take something from the relationship. You sit and I'm not into doing forensics at the time I'm involved in something. However, afterwards, and after I've moved on, I've kind of let it go. Sometimes I like to revisit things and kind of do a little forensic of, why that didn't work out as well. Kind of a forensic analysis myself for my own understanding. And sometimes that'll involve, a few years later, a conversation that allows you to be so far out of the moment, so far removed from it, and the other person too, that you can sit down and you can have a conversation with them and kind of say, well, what do you think happened? In your view, what happened? And you can say, in my view, this is what happened. And you can learn from it. In the heat of the moment, there's a lot of emotions flying when there's a situation where there's a breakup of friendship or relationship, of intimate relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever, that there's so much emotionally charged energy that it is very challenging to actually get to the real root of what's going on. And as you said, people don't communicate. And in my view, it's because, we are products of our environment. Maybe your parents you grew up with didn't communicate. And you think that's what relationship is about, is not communicating feelings. A lot of men don't communicate their feelings within the context of relationships. You never saw your parents talking about things. And so it's foreign to you. And so we are the product of all of our relationships. And maybe that just didn't happen yet. And the important thing about communicating is, as I've learned, is to be as truthful and honest and authentic as you can in that moment, based on how you feel in that moment. Maybe whatever you're saying isn't the absolute, 100% of what's happening with you, because you haven't really figured that out yet you have to be able to communicate something so you can communicate the truth of who you are in that moment in time. Presently, right now, this is how I feel, and this is how I feel within the context, within this relationship. This gets me. This irks me. This kind of turns me the wrong way. And this upsets me. And I'm big on one thing. We have the ability to control our thoughts, our feelings, our inner conversations, and our actions and responses to life. We have to take charge of those. It's part of sovereignty. It's part of our personal sovereignty. You have that right to control those things. And I'm all about mitigating the outside influences that seek to control those things within me. I'm responsible for my feelings. And if you are in a relationship, you have to take responsibility. You have to be accountable for what you're thinking, what you're saying, the actions you're taking at all times. You can't blame somebody else because you did something or because you feel a certain way. This is a lot that goes on, and it happens to for somebody who I've seen in the past who has been who's not being vulnerable, not being open to the person that they're with, not being truthful, not being authentic, sort of playing a role and not very well, and saying and dancing around the truth of what they're thinking and feeling. It is challenging. No relationship can work under those terms. The two people have to literally come to grips with being honest with each other. Otherwise, there's no growth within the context of the relationship. It's about every relationship, for me at least, every relationship is an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to learn and evolve as a human being within the context of something that is very intimate. Could be an intimate friendship, could be an intimate relationship, whatever it is. It's intimate based on the fact that it's someone you're sharing yourself with, who you are, the essence of who you are with. And so that to me is quite. It's important. It's the kind of the bedrock for me. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be flat out in saying that I wasn't always the best communicator. It was very challenging for me to communicate during my first relationship, my first breakup, my first divorce after 15 years.
You
not
and
because
James Bond.
Yeah, really.
I mean,
James
really.
Bond.
You look at the evolution of James Bond, right? There it is, right on the screen. As you said, it was a different era, right? And he grew. I haven't seen this movie, but I mean, yeah, that's what it made me think.
Oh, you need to see it. What's interesting is when I tell people what I got out of a movie and they tell me what they got out of a movie, it's like two different things. I'm watching specifically for how the writer of the movie is portraying these characters and how these characters are evolving throughout the time that they're on screen. That's what I'm looking for. And I'm always loving them. I love movies that show relationships where people in those relationships continue to evolve. They stumble, they fall, they get up again, and they discover something about themselves after that. Because as a result of the fall. And if they'd never fallen, they never would have discovered whatever it was about themselves. Nothing is perfect. Perfection is a moving target, and it's better to stumble and fall and become and evolve as a human soul, because that's, without falling, you're not going to evolve.
You're just 100%
you don't evolve.
Right.
Yeah, you got to stumble, you got to fall, you got to trip, you got to make mistakes, you got to deal with that. You got to have those misfortunes and unfortunate circumstances in order to be given the ability to make choices. And then you have to live with those choices, be accountable for those choices all the time. I'm accountable in this relationship is probably one of the most challenging ones I've had in my life. The relationship I'm in now for 20 years, 21 years this next month. And it's one of the most challenging ones, and it's the reason why I'm here. It's the reason why I'm still in this relationship. I've already seen that grass is green on the other side thing, and it's not always greener. People say, if I was with so-and-so, listen, everybody's got baggage. Everybody has baggage. And when you bring that baggage into the relationship, and that baggage is based on, again, previous experiential wisdom. Maybe it wasn't wisdom you were experiencing. Maybe it was something else that you and you weren't open, you weren't vulnerable, you weren't honest, you weren't authentic. You were portraying a role, so to speak, and not being open with that particular individual. I've actually seen people who are looking for love, looking for a relationship, and they are being inauthentic so that they can actually somehow snare the opposite sex or same sex, whatever, the person that they want in their lives. They've got this vision of this person and a laundry list of things that they want this other person to have, and they have maybe 8 of them, but not all 10, or they got 5 of them, but not all 10, and you're like, what? We have to accept everything about everyone in our relationship.
I couldn't agree more, and I think you're absolutely right. No matter how successful or beautiful or perfect somebody appears, everybody, it doesn't matter how they have flaws, imperfections. They have embarrassing stories, mistakes, whatever it is, things that they want to forget. And as you said, people are insecure. You're not the only one who feels awkward or wish certain things could be different. I mean, I think that's the biggest trick or the biggest secret to recognize that we all have our flaws, but you need to embrace your authentic self and love yourself, and then love yourself some more. And for our listeners here on Connect to Love, Michael, would love to hear some of your tips and tricks on what you do to embrace your authentic self, or what you have done in the past, or what you've witnessed somebody else do that you thought was really significant that impacted you.
One of the most challenging things for me to actually do was reveal mistakes. I think it's important to reveal stumbles, falls, mistakes, to actually reveal that you are fallible as a human being. Nobody's perfect, and people want to portray themselves as perfect individuals. Everything's gone right. I went to the right school. I had the right grade point average. I had this. I had that. However, you really know that you're connecting with someone, and you're being open with that person, be it a friend, a new friend, or in a relationship in the context of an intimate relationship. That when you are willing to talk about every ridiculous mistake you've ever, or not even every, but just a one or two of your worst mistakes, things that you did, and you say, and you look back on them, and you go, yeah, that was a really dumb thing to do, or that thing was not my finest moment. Let's share our not so finest moments with people. Not everyone, people that you connect with.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, because nowadays you share your not so finest moment.
One popped right into my head right when you were talking.
Come on, what was it? I want to know.
My not so fine. It's funny. It took me right back to high school, and I was babysitting these kids, and you're a young girl who has these young boys who come to say hello, and I didn't let them in the house. The one young man I was talking to outside, and his friend, unbeknownst to me, went into the house and took some liquor from the people that I was babysitting. And I had no idea that he did this. And a few days later, the people that I was babysitting called me and asked me to come down, and they asked me if I took their liquor. And I'm like, no, I didn't. And but I had to admit that I allowed these young men to come down to the house. And it was, I mean, it was humbling, and I was mortified. I mean, I felt that I had betrayed their trust. I mean, it was, you talk about a really hard lesson. I think I was maybe in 9th or 10th grade in high school. And it was a tough lesson. And I felt betrayed by the two young men, whether or not the one knew that the other one was doing it. But it was, it was a very humbling experience. And you just took me right there. How many years ago was that?
That was crazy. That is, those are those moments when you have to be honest. What's interesting, and this is something that I've found out the hard way, is that it's better to just tell the truth, no matter how hard it hurts. Just tell the truth, and because if you tell any kind of lie, white lie, sideways lie, leftways lie, it could be sort of a half truth. The other half will come back to bite you in the rear. At some point, it'll come back. It might be the next day. It might be 20 years later. It might be later in life at some point. And I learned this in the business that I was in, and in life, that you have to be honest with yourself and with them. And those are the mistakes that you actually make. You make mistakes because you didn't tell everything that you should have. You didn't say everything that you should have said, and you and literally, and you don't feel good about it. It's the way you feel. I'm not going to say I've been the most, I've not been the most honest person in a relationship sometime earlier on in 30, 40 years ago in my life. I cared about the opposite sex. I cared about people's feelings, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't following this model of some of the other people. Where I was in a band when I was 12 years old, 13 years old, 14 years old. I was in a band. Yeah, I was in a band. Man, we were having a good time. About 9-piece band back in the 70s, 71, 72, 73, and even in 1974, actually, about 4 years, we were heavily in the music, playing all over the place, playing weddings, playing this, playing that, playing in a teen club, playing in the officers club, the NCO club. We were always playing somewhere. And the guys I was running with, the guys who were in the band, were kind of like, I would say, James Bond class womanizers. I mean, they were. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, I'd watch some of the things that they did, and I said, I don't ever want to do that. So they were great role models for what not to do. And I said, no, I would be honest. I would be incredibly honest with women that I got together with in the future. And I have been, I'm not going to say I've followed that completely, but I've learned that when you really don't feel good about yourself when you don't tell the truth within your relationship. And as a matter of fact, just don't even do anything that would have to lead to you telling the truth about something, and just turn it down. Just say, I get approached every once in a while by women online and otherwise. First thing I tell them is, I'm in a committed relationship. I'll slip it in there somehow initially in the first,
right.
Because I know what's going on. I'm not stupid. I'm not naive. I know what's happening. They see my picture, they read my profile, they do this, and hey, and when the communication starts with, hey, what's going on? I'm going, okay, I know where this is going, so let me come right out and say that I'm in a committed relationship and we were having a good time this weekend, and if I hear from him again, then I know I was right? I know I was right, rather than start a conversation and string people on, and I see guys do some of the most ridiculous things out of, I don't know, ego or hubris or something, and I'm just saying, it's better just to be, no song and dance. Let's just be honest. It's very challenging to do because you have to. Being honest means, again, being vulnerable.
Being vulnerable. Yep. Being vulnerable.
Yeah, being honest means being vulnerable.
Yeah, and I think, Michael, it's important. You talk about embracing your mistakes. I think your mistakes make you human. They give you a wealth of experience to draw on. They help you help other people. I think that they can make you stronger. Certainly, there were some character strengths that I gained from my experience, and I think that a lot of times when we do humble ourselves, it is a reminder, that maybe, we need to, regroup, we need to revisit, we need to look at how we're treating ourselves. We know sometimes we don't treat ourselves as well as we would treat a friend or somebody that we love. And, I think as you remind everybody so often that what we do has a ripple effect beyond what it is. We impact other people's lives, whether we realize it or not. So in your kindness and saying, what, I'm in a committed relationship, you are setting a standard, you're setting an example, and, you're letting somebody see, what ethically and morally the type of person that you are. And I think that's a very good thing because you're very aware of who you are. You're very self-assured. You're at the point in your life.
It's taken 40 years. I think that for somebody if somebody's listening to this radio show who's in their 30s and thinks that, who's had, breakups or this and that, I've been through 2 divorces, so I'm saying I'm the poster child for being in an extremely long relationship. But I think 20 years of being in a committed relationship without even having to be married during that time, 21 years this year, it takes work. It takes work because the things you have to be honest about, the things about yourself and understanding that the other person has flaws and getting to know what those flaws are and not taking advantage of those flaws, not exploiting them, just seeing them as and accepting them. I think one of the things, we talk about it, self-discovery. Self-discovery. My entire life has been one of self-discovery, and I know yours has too, although that's not a term that most people apply to their life, is self-discovery. It's we are continually discovering who we are, continually. Yeah, and relationships are one of the few ways, I think it's the main way, that we discover who we are and what we're about. And one of the things that I tell young people all the time is that, and nowadays, especially when there's people are connecting with other people they don't know, and they have an expectation that these other people will acquiesce to what they say and what they do, and that they'll acknowledge them. Because what we're really looking for as a human being is acknowledgement. It's one of our basic needs. Everybody wants to be acknowledged for what they do. And the one thing that what I see happening is that a lot of people have not discovered what their own talents and gifts are yet. Yet they're out there actually riding on the coattails of someone else's talents and gifts, right? I know everything about this basketball player or this football player. I know everything about this musical artist and what they did and where they went and whatever, and I follow them, and I'm whatever. I'm one of their groupies. Yet you're on the coattails of somebody else's talents. What are your talents? What are you good at? Your path of self-discovery should really entail what you're good at, what innate talents and gifts you were born with. And let me tell you why this is important. Because those, from being involved in those talents and gifts, if you're good with your hands and you're doing something with your hands, and you do it through art, or you do it through woodworking or drawing, whatever it may be, knitting even, you get a sense of satisfaction that grounds you as a person. And what I find is, when you don't understand what you're good at, what you can do that brings you a sense of success and satisfaction, there's sort of something hollow there, and you're looking outside of you for acknowledgement and for understanding, when you have, it's a part of the self-love process. I can go to somebody, I can say, look, I write and I produce a podcast. I love it. It helps, I don't know, one person or a dozen or 1,000. It doesn't really matter. I play the drums and I love it. I enjoy when I do that. I don't do it for other people. I do it for me. If I get out and I have to play with somebody, great. That's just a bonus. However, I enjoy doing it for me. I enjoy working with wood. I like painting. I like this, and I'm good at those things. One of the things that happens is you get this pillar within you of solidity. It's this solid, it's a three-legged stool you can stand on. And it doesn't matter.
I like that.
Yeah. Instead of a two-legged stool, you're always falling off of. It's a solid base. You know who you are. You understand what you're good at. You pursue those things in your quiet time. When you get together within the context of a relationship, you have, again, a three-legged stool to stand on, and then you can say, I'd like to get to know you. I know me, and I'm continually getting to know me. I'm a work in progress. We all are. However, I know enough about myself to be confident about myself, and bringing that to a relationship is a game changer. It's a game changer because a lot of these movies and books and all this other stuff that's out there in the creative world portrays a relationship as someplace you go to be whole. And to me, that's problematic. It is someplace where you can expand your understanding of yourself. However, It's up to you to work on being a whole person. Starts with you and what you do, what you're good at. And schools used to do this. Back when I grew up, we had auto shop, metal shop, sheet metal shop. We had art, we had woodworking, we had, oh my gosh, everything, right? You spend at least one period a day in that class, and you got to choose. You try one semester, you try one the next, and all of a sudden you go, wow, I made this thing. Right. Back in the day, it was a napkin holder, right? It was something crazy like that. You made a napkin holder. I think my mother still has the napkin holder, okay, that I made back in the beginning of high school. However, what happens is you're exposed to something that is unique to you and you alone. And from that, you can derive a tremendous amount of strength and self-confidence that you can bring into the context of a relationship, whatever kind it may be, and it's just transferred. You get this sense of confidence, and now it's where do you derive that sense of confidence from? You don't even know what you're putting yourself out there on social media and expecting to get dozens or hundreds or thousands of people or millions of people to respond to you doing whatever dancing you're doing. You may be a good dancer, but if you're looking for somebody else to acknowledge that you're a good dancer, then there's something missing. You have to believe and think I'm a good dancer. I derive joy from doing this, not because I'm putting it out there and I'm expecting other people to acknowledge that I am, but because because I am good. I work at this, and if it becomes a something you do for a living, great. If not a big deal. But at least that's one of the things that you're good at. People call me, it's funny. Somebody called me a Renaissance man like 25, 30 years ago. Oh, you play music. Oh, you do art. Oh, you write books. Oh, you do this. And that concept of Renaissance man came up, and I'm going, wow, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way. However, we all have the ability to do that. Back in the day, I knew girls who used to work on other girls' hair at their house. Come on over, I'll do your hair, I'll color your hair, whatever it is, right? And that was a way of connecting with someone as a friend. But this is it, self-discovery, letting go of mistakes and doing a forensics years later on them, not in the moment, because the how and the why of what happens in the moment is not so as important as what actions you're going to take to move beyond it. And in the heat of the moment, emotionally, it's very challenging to actually do any kind of forensic analysis because your emotions are covering the whole thing or contaminating everything. You have to step away from something for a while to be able to kind of look at it. But, all of this is about opening yourself up and being vulnerable, allowing people to putting yourself in a position where someone can put footprints on your heart. That's what it is. It's about opening up and putting yourself in a position where that can happen and letting it happen and learning from it. And if it doesn't go well, so be it. You let it go and you move on. And when you're through the emotional upheaval associated with it, when they've subsided and you can think clearly, you can go back and you can think about what happened, and maybe next time do something different. There's no black and white here. There's a lot of gray area.
Yeah, and I think, Michael, you speak about vulnerability and how it makes us grow and how it makes us learn. But, when you have a challenge, like you said, maybe it didn't go well. Guess what? That might be the game changer for you. That may be the pivot point that you need to really expand what it is that you're doing. And I love the idea of self-discovery and self-awareness. I think that is something we should definitely expand on another show, because I think that both of those open up a path for you to continue to grow, learn, and explore, and also to be in a space of gratitude. Because when you do that, you can, and you put yourself and you really love with your whole heart without conditions, which is what you do when you embrace a friend of yours with a big hug, you know, you open up to a different space of gratitude and joy. And I was just listening to a show, and they were talking about the different dimensions and how in the third dimension it's all about, you know, materialism and sex and money and being seen and whatever. And then, you know, you go into the fourth dimension where you're expanding into, you know, and how do you get there? You get there through gratitude and love. And then when you get to the fifth dimension, it's all about oneness. There is no separation. It's only that connection. It's what we do the show for. It's that connection to love. And I really like that, because I've had, you know, I mean, not that you don't go back and forth between the dimensions, but geez, if I could spend more time in a place of gratitude and joy, and then, you know, really feel that oneness from my neighbor, where when you do give them that hug, you feel their heart. I mean, there is nothing like a hug like that. And I know you give one. I just know you do. Yeah. Because that's that space.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't forget one other thing. There's something we have to do. In opening up, we have to do things intentionally from a perspective of contrast, because we want contrast in our life. And a lot of times if the word doesn't come up, people don't think about it. However, you're not going to know what not being loved is until you've been loved deeply. And so understanding that contrast, you're able to then work within that to say, hey, I love this, and I'm not really liking of this, so this is what I want to shoot for in my life. I want this kind of connection. And again, I dare anybody to tell me they've got more than a circle of maybe 5 people that they're really, really, really solidly close to, that they have a deep connection with, that they can share what's going on in their life and their foibles and mistakes that are happening, and how they really feel about themselves. And that is so very important. And the question is, what's the mechanism nowadays for that? If you have one, you definitely can have another and another and another, and you can have, and in any given moment, one maybe one you're connecting with more than anybody else. I have friends I haven't talked to for a couple of years. We could get together and we could talk for hours, and honestly about ourselves, and we give each other big hugs and say we love each other, and then another 3 years goes by and we'll do it again. And others you'll talk to every week. Some you may talk to, every other month. Some you talk to on the phone. So this is, the contrast is incredibly important from that perspective. Self-discovery, putting yourself in a position to be vulnerable so you can experience the contrast in life. You have to. Okay. PRN FM. I love it. I was sharing this with somebody just the other day. Want our listeners to know that you have a new Instagram page, and it's called
Connect, and then the number 2, Love Energy. So it's Connect to Love Energy on Instagram. Yep, and we're just starting to put content out, so be patient with us. But it's an exciting new adventure, and
we want to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we want to hear from you too.
That possible.
Yeah, definitely so. And to our listeners out there, either on PRN FM or through the podcast, we love you and appreciate you. Lisa and I love these conversations, and if you have a comment, we'd love to hear what it is. Lisa, can it tell our listeners where to send their comments if they have some?
So
an email?
Connect, and then the number 2, love@gmail.com. So
awesome.
That is, I know we absolutely would love to hear from you. And your thoughts on where you've been vulnerable, some successes, your frustrations, what it is that you'd like us to delve into. I mean, we're open to every discussion. I mean, we're just so excited and honored to be with you each week. It just, it fills, I know it fills my heart. I know it fills Michael's heart. It's something that we look forward to each week. And there's just so much more to discover, and I'm so grateful. I'll let you close out the show, Michael.
Well, thank you. Keep discovering yourselves, as your listeners out there of ours on wherever you may be. Be open to discovering more about yourself, and that's where the great joy is in life. It's not about facts. Facts are thrown around way too much. The who, what, when, why, where. It's more about, hey, how do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel about you? How do you feel about your life? And letting others know, sharing with others how you feel about anything. Feelings should be the topic of conversation, not facts, because facts, they come, they go. There's no feeling in facts, but there's feeling in conversation and togetherness. So move in that direction, and you'll find that there'll be a lot more well-being in your life, a lot more joy, a lot more happiness, a lot more satisfaction. Okay? Great to be with you.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you.